All right, now good afternoon. I think I have the ominous task of being the last speaker after lunch, which please stay awake. It gets dozy now. My presentation is on your emergency plan as a living document. What is a living document? A document or a policy, a living document or a policy is one that is updated and reviewed regularly. A couple of examples that many of us use on a regular basis maybe are strategic plans. Some of us do strategic planning for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and our collections policy. In the library world, which is what I'm in, we use collection development policies, and those change often, very often with new electronic devices and resources for us. So a living document is anything that is updated and reviewed on a regular basis, a minimum of annually by a group of stakeholders. And Robin just mentioned writing the date down, which is a great idea. Parts of the plan may actually need to go more frequently than annually, but at a minimum annually. Who are our stakeholders? In my case, I'm very lucky to have a strong emergency operations management relationship with our fire and police. In Lake Wales, our fire chief is our EOC director, and we stay in contact quite a lot. Your stakeholders are your library and museum staff. These are the people that will be most closely impacted after a disaster, after implementation of your emergency plan. If any of you have boards, either volunteer boards or government-appointed boards, they're also our stakeholders. And corporate administrators, in my case, I would say my city administration. I am under a city commission, a city manager form of government. So these are all my stakeholders, and you all can probably identify people on your level that are your individual stakeholders. Of that list, I would probably say the top two are my most critical, keeping a good relationship with my EOC and safety and the staff who are going to be an integral part of implementing any plan. You need to determine when, if it's less than annually, when do you need to implement changes to your living emergency plan. We've talked a lot today about training, training and new ideas. Just the very fact that we're all in a room with each other and we're sharing different ideas and thoughts, it's been good for us, I think, in Lake Wales to kind of make notes on what other people do. This could result in, are you in good communication with those above you? Are you asking whether policies have been changed, or are you in the loop with emails and memos when things change and that would affect your plan? Our Human Resources Department manages our risk management here. I try to talk to our HR director at least once a year, usually during budget time, to find out what my insurance policy is going to cost my budget, number one. But if there's any changes in the priorities of what will be replaced, is there a new deductible, all of these will impact me and my plan and whether I need to do any updating. And here's some more ideas. Updating staff responsibilities. If your staff is lucky enough to maybe get a promotion but stay within the institution, are you looking to change what job description handles what, or what person handles what? I think we all can think of people on our staff who are strong at certain skill levels, but you may not think of them if you think in terms of their job description. But so identifying people who are good at certain things, good in situations, and good at taking responsibilities is a good way to update your living emergency plan. And then, of course, there's nothing like first-hand experience. If you've sadly had an incident where you've had to tackle an emergency, a disaster, immediately reviewing how you reacted to a tornado, to a water pipe bursting. What did we do right? What did we do wrong? That's always something that probably shouldn't wait for an annual review. Firsthand disasters, firsthand emergencies. You really do need to sit down and kind of immediately evaluate how your plan handled that. Utilizing the emergency plan each day. Effects on the library, museum, and staff. And level of knowledge and responsibility can vary from institution to institution. At Lake Wales Public Library, we have 4 professional librarians. But I've also got some wonderful library assistants who are super handy and know both ends of a screwdriver and are just our go-to people for so many things. So for me to say, I only want the professional staff to be responsible for certain things would be very short-sighted on my part. And as staff changes, I also need to change those responsibilities. But key responsibilities can actually be taken over by people you can just rely on. And I think that statement may need to be written into your living document, but the knowledge that you have of who's great in a pickle and who's not, it can be that very valuable. I'm a great believer, kind of like Robin said, in playing the game of where's the fire extinguishers located. We have every other week staff meetings. I throw in sometimes just kind of questions. I love the idea of someone being responsible in my institution of looking at the facilities. That's a good knowledge to have. I was sharing with the Lake Wales group that my goal in a lot of this is to have at least one person on each shift that has strengths in things like CPR, AED, fire extinguisher. Then, because we're open 60 hours a week, 6 days a week, and obviously everyone can't work at that point, so to have that into your living emergency plan, who at each shift is, or what responsibilities at each shift is critical. I think we all have gone over where is your emergency plan stored, but who needs access to the full plan? Who needs access to a condensed version? I would vote for everybody on staff needs the condensed version, the thumbnail that can be put on a PDF and put on a telephone or a tablet. But the key folks who are at the a full responsibility level to the full plan. I often, when I do annual evaluations of employees, this is one thing we talk about because one of the canned questions in our City of Lake Wales employee evaluation is, how does this employee manage safety on the workplace, emergency on the workplace? So this opens up an opportunity for me to talk one-on-one to my staff, where they're just to kind of remind them that there's a lot to be expected when something unexpected happens. Which staff are responsible for the general assignments during or after an emergency, and which staff members are responsible for detailed assignments? This, again, is, I think it would vary from institution to institution, but I feel it's important in a living document to at least address that you don't want to run around wondering who's responsible for what. But if there's a team you can put together from varying departments or divisions, who needs to be in the hierarchy, who needs to be responsible for what? Sometimes, as we've talked about, just having one person who can manage a phone tree or has good skills at communicating to make sure that everybody's okay. I mean, we all work with each other in our staffs extended periods of time. We've all probably joked that we spend more time with people we work with sometimes with our own families. So knowing that everybody's okay is important. So having in your living plan, having an allocation for that. One of the things we learned the last time we had we had to actually implement our entire emergency plan in 2004 was things like who's handling payroll, who's handling getting timesheets together, what staff member. So even things such as clerical duties, that so we all know we're going to get paid at the end of the week if that's the case in your institution. These are all things that not specifically in detail that could be addressed in an emergency plan, but that you make allocations for, that there are some things that are as simple as clerical. The living emergency plan can be as simple as assigning responsibility for maintaining or updating the emergency contact employee list. I have one employee who is the most detail-oriented person in the world. We just hired a new part-timer last week, and immediately she had shot everyone out, the new phone list, with this new employee in it, and it's great. She has taken ownership of that, and any little thing that can be assigned in that emergency plan as a living document, if you can identify someone who would take ownership, take pride, and it's great. It is wonderful. I think we can all agree to have one person that you just know is going to get the job done. We've talked about the NIMS courses and the whole NIMS hierarchy. I think we'll all agree that it's a great plan. It's a paramilitary plan, and in a really bad situation, it's necessary. But I think in a more simplified emergency plan, in our case, we do need to know the hierarchy and assign accordingly. With training and review comes confidence. This is something we all can agree on. Staff support. I don't think, I was sharing with this group earlier, every time there's an active shooter, tragically, news story, somewhere in this country or world, immediately I get questions from my staff. Why we're feeling like we're not adequately trained to handle something that terrible. And so I think even just the confident, I've actually, with our AED training, our defibrillator training, I have had one person who totally has claimed the responsibility for calling 911. She says, I don't want to be responsible for doing CPR or whatever, but I can call 911. That's a great thing. Determining what departments or divisions should review and update their sections of the plan annually. Who should review and update more frequently? We are required, as most of us, we talked today here, almost everyone here is required to turn their plan into their emergency operations unit at least once a year. Sadly, our budgets are due the last week of May, and my emergency plan is due on June 1st to go to EOC, so the timing isn't always great, but ours goes to review by the emergency operations manager the first day of hurricane season. So, and I'm always grateful when he, as a professional, can tell me that there are shortfalls. So there again, that's a living document when someone who is looking from the outside in can point out some things to you. Keeping it real in your living plan reflects what's possible in your institution. We all are constrained by budgets and staffing levels. This isn't to say that your emergency plan needs to minimize the importance of other things, but I think it needs to prioritize and reviewing frequently what is the priority. Again, the same person that updates my emergency list loves to proofread anything. If you've got somebody like that who can just proofread your emergency plan for typos, while they're reviewing it, they are learning the plan and taking ownership of it. So I think all of us can agree that it's good to have someone review and reread. I've hit send on an email just like all of us have and realized there was stuff in there that wasn't properly listed. So, but to have someone who likes to proofread, it's a good way to keep that plan living. We're all reliant on our institutional budgets. We must keep our plans updated within our budgets in mind. One story I want to share with you is that in 2004, Lake Wales was hit with 3 Isaac hurricanes. Never happened anywhere in the world within a 6-week period, but we got it. Our finance director recently shared with the department heads that the city of Lake Wales received their last payment from FEMA for the 04 hurricanes in 2015. So realistically, the knowledge of having FEMA and the ability to apply for reimbursement is one thing, but the reality of the time frame of getting FEMA reimbursements, insurance reimbursements, anything like that, it's a whole different. 11 years later, we finally get the last payment. So I think that considering our budgets is a good plan enhancer. What can you afford to handle? And again, whoever handles your risk management within your institution, ask the questions. Can you tell me what my building and content are insured for? If fire sweeps through this library, we've got 110 items in our collection. We are grossly underinsured, would never be able to replace 110,000 items and the building and other content, furniture and so forth. So I think that's an important piece of knowledge to take into your emergency plan and to update as the annual renewal on these plans are. Risk management in a public institution such as mine is considered a public document. So it's not something that can be hidden from us as employees or the public. They have the right to know. So it's not a question that you should shy away from. Strategic plans, again, will help you update your emergency plan. We need to address our strategic plan, and we'll do so over the summer. I've assigned it to a staff member. And it'll help us to move forward with our emergency plan once we see what those priorities are identified as for the next few years. Kate's presentation emphasized how important this is training is in a public document or in a living document. Training. And it can be as simple as, what's the acronym that the fire department tells you to use when you're using a fire extinguisher? What do you do if a child pulls the fire alarm? Well, the people who are in the building are supposed to leave because they're supposed to assume that there is a fire. So getting in touch with your directors, your emergency folks, your building officials will enhance your emergency plan. And ask if they will all assist you by reviewing the sections that are pertinent to them. Staff should know where copies of the full emergency plan are stored. And here's a couple of questions. Where is your staff emergency contact list? We just had this conversation here as we have a new employee. Do you have it saved to your phone? Do you have it stuck in your wallet? What if your wallet is stolen and everybody's personal information that's on your emergency list is in the hands of someone else? I think we can all just come up with things that not only are important for our staff to know, but will enhance their confidence in being able to implement our emergency plans. Your emergency plan as a living document is worth nothing unless it's read, reread, and reviewed and updated. I didn't add that to that slide, but I think that's very important also. And again, publish it in a format that staff and stakeholders will use. A bullet point guide is perfect for a PDF or on a cell phone. You obviously are not going to get the detailed information, but I think we could come up with top 10 points for loading to someone's cell phone. Individual assignments that can be sent to staff that have been identified as having certain skill levels and saved in an electronic format. And I do keep focusing on electronic format, and the reality is that sometimes in a disastrous situation we don't have electronic format. But then that's another part of our living plan that needs to be addressed, is what do you do if all the cell towers have been blown down, or the computers on your desktop is now soaked with water? I hope this has helped you. We, I think that with any kind of update and staff buy-in and involvement and stakeholders buy-in and involvement, your plan will remain a living and viable document.